Tygerius reigned over his newly formed empire for 40 years. In his 4 decades of leadership, the domain of the Tygerian Empire expanded from the northern sea to the edges of the lands of Lothra and the kingdom of Albernia, both domains controlled by the elves. Thanks to the influence and presence of Tygerius and Anderism, many citizens of Lothra and Valbernia were sympathetic and welcoming to the empire, and the elven lords found themselves asking for alliances with Tygerius. To the east, the dwarven kingdoms in the mountains of Jiva worked trade agreements with the Tygerian Empire to secure their halls and their riches, and in exchange, the military and industrial might of Tygeria was without question or rival. Only 2 lands still threatened the empire, the island nation of Dalaheim and the northeastern tribes of Pharecia. These tribes, who thrived on war and looting, launched raids and invasions regularly against the empire, though never able to break her. Tygerius repelled their invasions again and again, until both raiding peoples learned to fear and respect the power of Tygerius and Anderism. Humans all around the world came to love Tygerius and his empire, and saw them both as a beacon of hope to their race, and other races under Alanai began to worship and follow the path of Anderism as a result. After Tygerius' death, his domain fell to his son Clovis, who ruled fairly but unremarkably. Clovis did little to expand or improve the empire, content to let the current state of affairs remain. The people trusted him, and he trusted the legacy of his father. Clovis was 28 when he took the throne, and his reign lasted 52 years. After Clovis's passing, Clovis's son Conrad took the throne. Known in the annals of history of the court as Conrad the Fool, Conrad was the most spoiled of Clovis's children. He neglected his duties to the Church of Alanai and to his subjects. Preferring debauchery and hedonism, he squandered royal funds and taxes on personal treasures. Under his rule, the clans of Dalaheim grew bold enough to attempt their invasions once again, and Conrad did little to stop it. Conrad took 5 different wives, only 2 of which were human. He made many marriage agreements with Valbernia and Lothra, which benefited the elvish lands more than the empire. Also, he would have the finest of elvish concubines. The church priests begged Conrad to cease his behavior and repent, but Conrad ignored their pleas. It is said that in this time Alanai's blessing left Tygeria as misfortune took the land. Conrad would eventually die, leaving little of the imperial treasury unscathed, and to make matters worse, Conrad's only legitimate heir was assassinated before his coronation, and since the Church of Alanai would not allow any of the elvish children of Conrad to ascend to the throne, there were only 3 potential successors: Varus Colician, Tetris Colvan, and Aureliana Asteria. Varus Colician was the quickest to make his move. Varus was ambitious, violent, and war-hungry. Varus was the second son of Conrad and was always jealous of his older brother for his chance to take the throne before him. According to church teachings, it was Varus who ordered the assassination of Conrad's first son, whose name to this day is still unknown. More than his brothers, Varus hated Anderism as well, seeing it as a weak religion that favored non-humans. Varus, a known racist towards the other chosen of Alanai, sought to turn the empire of his great-grandfather into a human supremacist nation, imposing heavy restrictions and persecutions on the non-human residents. Varus made his desire for power and his hatred of Anderism known to all. Varus gathered his supporters and military strength and marched north. His forces took control of the northern lands and captured the capital quickly. It is also believed by some that Varus was under the influence of a traitor Dionin, as it was reported that Varus and his forces employed the use of dark ethereal magic, and according to some of the legends, it's said he even recruited dark ethereal beasts and demons to his ranks. Tetris, who was the same age as Varus, was brave, handsome, and popular. He did not hate Anderism and had no love for his brother. He rose to the challenge and proclaimed himself emperor and rallied his forces to oppose Varus. The remaining Andarian priests initially ran to Tetris for safety from Varus, who agreed to house them for a time. But that changed when a Dionian priest named Julian arrived and offered Tetris his support. Julian offered Tetris magical support and power if he only agreed to sacrifice the priests of Anderism to the Dionian he served. Ever the opportunist, Tetris accepted the deal and gathered the priests under the guise of a secret meeting, only to have them sacrificed to the Dian Hethra, one of the traitor Dian who had been hiding in the Ethereum. Only one priest, Saint Ruva, was spared, as he had a vision warning him of the coming treachery. In return for his devotion, Tetris's army was bolstered by the supernatural. Golems and other elemental constructs led the charge of Tetris's army as he prepared to engage Varus's forces for control of Tygeria. Aureliana controlled the south of the empire and was the most reluctant to act. Saint Ruva appeared to her in court and was welcomed with honors. Under Ruva's guidance, Aureliana grew her armies to repel the usurpers. To bolster her forces, Aureliana turned to diplomacy rather than dark forces, rallying the dwarves of Giva, the elves of Albernia, which would later be called Valencia, and the elves of Lothra. The three nations offered their full support to the docile and meek Aureliana. With their vast powers and resources, the war for Tygeria began, and after 5 years of warfare, the Aureliania's armies won a decisive battle called the Battle of Crystal Peaks. Varus and Tetris, who were not united against Aureliana, were easily overwhelmed and defeated. Varus was executed publicly, and his followers scattered to the winds, some fleeing to Dalaheim. Tetris, who pleaded for mercy, was exiled, and his name slips into obscurity, though some believe he would go on to build a new kingdom beyond Phariscia. After the final battle for the capital, Aureliana and her vanguard, tired and bloodied, raised their banner over the capital. Finally, Tygeria was at peace, and it had its empress. But not for long. One of the elvish generals of Lothra, Saren, saw his opportunity to deal a death blow to the weakened Tygerian Empire. Before Aureliana's forces could even rest, Saren ordered an attack on Aureliana's forces. Weakened and taken by surprise, the Emperor's forces were quickly beaten, and Aureliana was killed, having only held the throne for 3 days. This act of betrayal will be remembered as the Lothra treachery, and would forever harm relations between humanity and elves. Tygeria was broken, with no heir or hope in sight, and Saren marked his victory with a celebration in which he burned down all remaining Anderism houses of worship. This final insult would seal his fate. Alanai's anger burned against Lothra and Saren. Though Tygeria had fallen from its grace and blessing, Alanai would not abide this treachery. Alanai called Saint Ruva to punish Saren. Ruva sought him out, and when brought before the twisted elf, he spoke, quote, "I speak for the one true creator of this world, and to the god of Anders, Tygeria, and all blessed races. This is what my Lord Alanai, says to you. You treacherous and wicked creature. You steal victory through underhanded and cruel methods, and you put to the sword those you once called allies. This is the smoke and ash of my houses of worship that waft up to me, carrying the screams and tears of my children. You have turned your back on the light, so now light shall turn its back on you and your kin. Henceforth, the sun itself shall be your bane. You will cower in the darkness like vermin, never to bask in the light that you betrayed." The moment he finished his decree, the sun began to rise, and the light scorched Saren, burning him to ash before the eyes of his fellows. All of the Lothra who stood with Saren burned in the sun's light and fled to the caverns and shadows. These elves became the first dark elves, unable to live in the world of light. The Tygerian Empire by now had all but officially fallen. Saint Ruva, the last of the Anderism priests, traveled the wilderness of Tygeria and its lands, weeping and lamenting the fall of the once great empire that knew Alanai and worshipped him. But Alanai spoke calmly and with hope to Saint Ruva. "Tygeria is not fallen," he had said. "This is merely an interregnum. I will raise this empire once again, stronger and mightier than before, and her rule shall be shaded by wings of black." This riddle was unclear to Saint Ruva, but pleased with this news, he left the lands of Tygeria in the hopes of spreading his message to other nations. Meanwhile, the lands of Tygeria were divided up amongst the interested parties surrounding it. Dalaheim took the northern coast for their own. The Lothra and Valbernia elves worked out treaties and agreements on what territories in the south they would hold, and the dwarves left their mountain halls to find what lands they could occupy. With the dwarves having left their mountain homes, Alanai called out to the dragons, the ancient and mighty beast whom he had blessed first after humans, and ordered them to take refuge in the mountain halls once held by the dwarf lords. The dwarves, unwilling to spark the ire of the dragon empress, abandoned their homes in Jita and remained in Tygerian lands ever after. The humans who remained in Tygeria were afraid, feeling abandoned and alone. The once proud nation they called home was no more, and now 3 factions held sway over their lush and fertile lands. They prayed to Alanai, to the Dionin, and to any that would save them. But salvation would not come until 400 years later.